Sinners, brilliant, beautiful film. Ryan Coogler is a masterful writer-director, really arguably at the top of the game right now. I mean, yeah, arguably at the top of the game. Certainly has a cultural and economic cachet right now with the success of Sinners. You know, this film came out of his attempts to do an up-to-date Blade adaptation for Marvel, and that didn't happen. It couldn't get off the ground. So he transformed some of those ideas into Sinners. You know, Sinners is kind of a dense film. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of subtext to be explored here that I simply don't have the knowledge or capability to fully explore. You know, lots has been written and said about this film as well. The Dr. Jared Bell has some interesting anti-capitalist critique of Sinners, which I found very interesting and enlightening. You know, this I can't remember the article in which he was reading from and kind of basing the discussion but has a jumping off point. And it talks about black entrepreneurism and black capitalism, and those being futile answers ultimately, and how Ryan Coogler seems to be pushing this pro-black entrepreneurship message. You know, I think that would be a valid critique. Ultimately, I do not think that is what Ryan Coogler is doing with Sinners. The thing that I would like to explore, and the thing that I feel I have any value to add to this conversation, if any, right, is kind of exploring some of the statements the film is making on empire and colonialism. And I would like to demonstrate that Sinners is anti-capital. First, let's talk about the antagonist. He is a vampire from Ireland. Why? Why is he a vampire from Ireland? Is it just so that Ryan Coogler can discuss Pan-African themes in a film that is digestible to mainstream white audiences? Perhaps. There's something to be said about that, right? I don't think we can ignore, especially as artists, I don't think we can totally ignore commercial considerations always. And we can't ignore that as critics if we're critiquing things. Now, why an Irish vampire? We learned from him that he wasn't always this way, right? At some undisclosed time, and we don't know exactly when. There's some theories that are floated online. We know that he himself is bitten, I don't know, taken over, I don't know, introduced into the coven. I don't fucking know how vampires work. And the framing of it is clearly, you know, the framing of it is clearly a vampire invasion coincides with the English colonial project in Ireland. And that's the main thing, right? He became a vampire in the immediate aftermath of Britain's colonial efforts in Ireland, right? Like we can break down and get into the nitty gritty of exact dates and how old this guy is, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if Ryan Coogler knows those dates, because ultimately it doesn't matter, really, right? The point in that is about empire and colonialism and how the colonized carry on and reinforce empire. You know, choosing an Irish person for this is brilliant, right? It encapsulates some of the arguments that Ryan Coogler is presenting. That alone is anti-capitalist, right? That alone of making these comparisons and drawing our attention to these things is an anti-capitalist act. Now, the specific charge about what is it, Smoke and Stack, their entrepreneurship, and that being an example of Ryan Coogler's conservatism, you know, which sounds so absurd to me personally. It is only when black men try to buy into the system that they are then corrupted by empire. Let me say that again. It is only when black men try to buy into the system that they are then corrupted by empire. If it suits empire's needs and wants to vampirize, right, to make one of us a black man, then they'll do that. Because of course they will. Because they always have, right? You know, it doesn't give that specific black man any more real power. Of course it doesn't. And you know, that this entrepreneurship attempt results not only in their corruption, but in the death of family and friends. The ending then, in which the Ku Klux Klan comes on through. After this one brother, he makes it through all of it, right? He dodges all that bullshit. He gets through to the sunrise. And it doesn't matter. Empire is still coming. And empire and white supremacy cannot be separated. They go hand in hand. They go tandem. It's kind of that in and of itself is kind of a nihilistic diagnosis. I don't know if I am finding the answers to the question being raised in the film. They may be there, and I just haven't thought too deeply about it yet. Often, I don't think the answers necessarily matter. Just because we framed one battle after another in such a way of, here's a question, here's an answer. That doesn't mean Sinners needs to do the same thing. Of course not. It would be absurd. So yeah, I don't know if there's any answer, and it's not necessarily even the answer to a question of how do we combat this. It is positing something we can do, which is return to our roots, right? In Ryan Coogler's exploration of, or research, I should say, for Blade, he visited Africa, right? And from my understanding is he emerged that with a new Pan-African understanding. And we see that on film, certainly. Later on, there's this rejection of the church. There's a rejection of Christianity after, oh Lord, I can't remember the character's name, the blues player. He's survived, and comes back to the church, his father's church, who, this congregation does not freak out at the appearance of this young man. He's cut up, he's bloody, he's bleeding. His father takes him in his arms, but he says, reject the thing you love, and this, my thing, will solve your problem. A familiar positioning from religious figures, irregardless of the religion. What does that rejection mean, right? He doesn't become a gospel singer, he stays a blues singer. What does that rejection mean? I think it's probably a rejection of empire, a rejection of white supremacy, a rejection of whiteness with a W, with the capital W. Whiteness as in the culture forced upon all of society. Lots of things happening. And again, much smarter people than me have commented on this. Ultimately, what I walked away from Sinners with is we must go to the past to find the answers for tomorrow. It'll be fascinating to see if or when Ryan Coogler and everybody do Sinners 2, how these themes are expounded upon now that our protagonist is a vampire, assuming that that's the route that they would go with. Ultimately, both of these films are incredible, beautiful, masterfully made, both of them. Both of them, I hope I have shown a little bit why they are leftist films that are anti-empire. I hope I've shown that a little bit. At the start of this, I talked about the tribes we find ourselves in at the Oscars. One battle after another versus Sinners. Who fucking cares? It's the Oscars. I like when my favorite thing wins just as much as the next cinephile, But both of these films are ultimately leftist films, I believe. And so why are we fighting over it? Why are we arguing over which one's better, which one deserves to win what? It's kind of absurd, and ultimately, probably, I think it's a psyop from Empire. It's just another distraction for us to worry about. And instead of really exploring these movies and really taking the most that we can out of them for ourselves and for our culture and our communities, we're angry our favorite didn't win.